As hairdressers, we all understand why it is important to have an established core of classic haircuts that work across all lengths and textures. With this in mind, Toni and Guy created the original Classic Cuts video collection. This has played a major part in the educational program that has helped establish our worldwide reputation. At Toni and Guy, we are constantly inspired by contemporary fashion trends and reflect these in our annual collections. Now we have also revised our basic techniques and present a second collection of classic cuts, which, as well as updating the original cuts, have added a men's collection and a guide to personalizing techniques. This collection of videos and the accompanying step-by-step book will provide you with a solid foundation in the skills of modern hair cutting and color. Classic Cut 2 from Toni and Guy.
The transient cut is a commercial mid-length look that is based on softness and versatility. A natural parting is taken from the front hairline and brought diagonally back to the profile at the nape. Diagonal forward sections are taken from the profile to the back of the ear, below the occipital. With the head slightly forward, the hair is combed to natural fall, held at one finger's depth, and point cut square from the profile to the outer edge. The opposite side is then worked piecemeal from the profile to the outer edge. Check balance. Diagonal forward sections are taken from above the occipital to the top of the ears. Exactly the same technique is used. The hair is combed to natural fall, elevated to one finger's depth, and point cut square to follow the guideline. The hair hair is worked from wet to dry while point cutting, so that the technique can be controlled to suit the model's natural texture. Check balance. A horseshoe section is taken from below the crown to the recession area. With the head upright, the hair is combed to the natural fall and the guideline in the back followed in the same way. From behind the ear, up towards the jaw, the line is point cut visually, working to a length most suitable to the face shape. In this case, just below the jawline. Exactly the same technique is used on the opposite side. Horseshoe sections are continued up the head and point cut in the same way until the natural parting is reached. Check balance. Radial partings are taken from the crown to the top of the ears, separating the back section from the front. With the profile parting in place, a pivoting radial section is taken from the crown to the nape. With the head upright, using the perimeter as a guide to length, the section is combed to 90 degrees and point cut to follow the head shape. Pivoting radial sections are continued and the technique repeated. Point cutting to follow the guideline. section is over-directed back to maintain length behind the ear. On the opposite side, exactly the same technique is used. Pivoting radial sections, elevated to 90 degrees, and point cut to follow the round of the head. Remember to over-direct the last section back. Check balance. Working in front of the radial partings, pivoting radial sections are continued. The over-direction of these sections is determined by hair density. In this case, the hair is over-directed back to a stationary guideline behind the ear. Point cut to follow the guide. Repeat this technique on both sides until the natural parting is reached. Check balance. Here, the hair has been coloured using a pivot triangle technique, which can be
As hairdressers, we all understand why it is important to have an established core of classic haircuts that work across all lengths and textures. With this in mind, Toni&guy created the original Classic Cuts video collection. This has played a major part in the educational program that has helped establish our worldwide reputation. At Toni&guy, we are constantly inspired by contemporary fashion trends and reflect these in our annual collections. Now we have also revised our basic techniques and present a second collection of classic cuts, which, as well as updating the original cuts, have added a men's collection and a guide to personalizing techniques. This collection of videos and the accompanying step-by-step book will provide you with a solid foundation in the skills of modern hair cutting and color. Classic Cuts 2 from Toni&guy.
The transient length haircut is a longer, layered shape, point cut for texture. A profile parting is taken from the center of the forehead to the center of the nape. Radial partings are taken from the crown to the top of the ears, separating the back sections from the front. A pivoting radial section is taken from the crown to the nape. With the head upright, the section is combed to 90 degrees at the crown to over-directed beneath this. The line is point cut visually, starting shorter at the crown to longer at the perimeter. Radial sections are continued around the back of the head. Subdivide the previously cut section to use as a guide. Comb the hair up to 90 degrees at the crown to over-directed beneath. The line is point cut from short to long. The last pivoting radial section behind the ear is over-directed back and up to maintain weight and length. It is point cut following the guideline. The opposite side is sectioned in exactly the same way and the technique repeated. The key difference being the line is cut from the perimeter to the crown instead of from the crown to the perimeter. The balance is cross-checked before continuing. Working in front of the radial parting, a pivoting radial section is taken from the crown through to the hairline at the side in front of the ear. This section is over-directed up and back to a stationary guideline behind the ear to maintain length and weight in front. The guideline is followed, point cutting from short to long. Pivoting radial sections are continued until the profile parting is reached, over-directing sections up and back behind the ear, point cutting to follow the guideline. Exactly the same technique is used on the opposite side. Balance. A profile section is taken approximately half an inch wide, from the crown to the front hairline. With the head upright, the section is combed to 90 degrees, and using the pre-existing guide to length at the crown, the hair is point cut at an angle from short to long. Continue to increase in length towards the front. In this case, the existing length is considered suitable. Pivoting radial sections are continued through the sides until the profile parting is reached. Using the inversion technique, standing on the opposite side to the side being cut, all sections are over-directed up to the initial profile section, a stationary guideline. All of the hair that reaches is point cut to follow this guide. Balance is checked before continuing. Exactly the same technique is repeated on the other side. Remember to stand on the opposite side to the side being cut. Cross-check balance. The perimeter is now detailed, keeping the profile parting in place. The hair in the back is combed to natural fall, elevated to 1 finger's depth, and point cut from the center out. The hair in front of the ear is over-directed back behind the shoulder, and the guideline followed, held at 1 finger's depth, and point cut square. The opposite side is cut in the same way, held at 1 finger's depth, and point cut piecemeal from the center profile parting to the outside edge. Is cross-checked. The hair in front of the ear is now combed to natural fall, and, still holding the hair at 1 finger's depth, the line is checked with point cutting, rounding any excess lengths. The balance is checked from the front before continuing. The sides are personalized with slide cutting. Over-direct all the hair in front of the ear forward, elevate to approximately 45 degrees away from the face, and, using the scissors like a razor, slide cut from the lip area down to the existing perimeter length. Use exactly the same technique on the opposite side. Only this time stand behind the shoulder instead of in front. This will allow greater control of the line being cut. Check balance. Because of the model's natural curl, we wanted to show the hair styled 2 ways. One with the diffuser used to enhance the curl, and the other power dried and styled with a round brush for volume and texture. Our model's hair was coloured using an alternative half-head technique, which can be viewed on our classic colouring series. Transient length recap. Back and sides. Partings and sections are pivoting radials. Distribution moves from 90 degrees at the crown to over-directed beneath. Elevation also moves from 90 degrees to over-directed. And the cut is visual, from short to long. Top. Partings and sections move from profile into pivoting radials. Distribution moves from 90 degrees to over-directed. Elevation moves from 90 degrees to over-directed. And the cut is visual, from short to long. Perimeter. Partings and sections are profile. Distribution is natural fall in the back to over-direct it through the sides. Elevation moves from one finger's depth at the back to a stationary 45 degrees at the side. And the line is point cut through the back and slide cut through the sides. Personalizing is an essential part of the Toni&guy philosophy. Texturizing techniques are used to adapt classic shapes to suit the individual. On the last video in this series, we introduced techniques such as point cutting, slicing, brick cutting, and razoring, which expand the classic portfolio to accommodate all lengths and textures of hair and allow the stylist to develop their creativity for the benefit of the client.
As hairdressers, we all understand why it is important to have an established core of classic haircuts that work across all lengths and textures. With this in mind, Toni&guy created the original Classic Cuts video collection. This has played a major part in the educational program that has helped establish our worldwide reputation. At Toni&guy, we are constantly inspired by contemporary fashion trends and reflect these in our annual collections. Now we have also revised our basic techniques and present a second collection of classic cuts, which as well as updating the original cuts, have added a men's collection and a guide to personalizing techniques. This collection of videos and the accompanying step-by-step book will provide you with a solid foundation in the skills of modern haircutting and color. Classic Cuts 2 from Toni&guy.
Personalizing is an essential part of the Toni&guy philosophy. Texturizing techniques are used to adapt classic shapes to suit the individual. On the last video in this series, we introduced techniques such as point cutting, slicing, brick cutting, and razoring, which expand the classic portfolio to accommodate all lengths and textures of hair and allow the stylist to develop their creativity for the benefit of the client. Point cutting uses the tips of the scissors to create a textured edge and a grown-in feel. Here it is shown in layering. On a mid-length perimeter, and a longer length. Point cutting can also be used with a filtering method to detail graduation. point cutting, where the whole length of the blade is used. Generally, it is worked as a detailing technique on dry hair to reduce weight without reducing length. Once again, this can be used on the interior or the perimeter. The slicing technique is used to create a looser, more seamless feel. The scissors are placed into the section of hair and sliced from the inside out as the scissors grip the hair shaft. If the blades are kept stationary, less hair is removed. It can be used to visually blend lengths and colour and create perimeter edges. Used on dry hair, the technique creates a more subtle effect. The depth of the slicing can be controlled by the angle of the scissor blade. Different results can be achieved according to the hair density. This technique was used extensively in the Toni&guy Raw collection. Can be used to visually blend short to longer lengths. The blades are slowly closed as they slide down the hair shaft, as opposed to cutting. This minimizes the removal of length and weight. It can be used on the perimeter, generally around the face. The method can also be used internally. The channeling technique is used to create more definite separation. It differs to slide cutting or slicing, as a cutting action is used as the scissors work through the hair. It can be used subtly to visually blend lengths, colour and perimeter shapes. Or more dramatically, for an extreme removal of weight, as seen in this cut from Toni&guy's On the Edge collection. Is used on hair with more natural movement or curl. The tips of the scissors are used to cut into the hair following a brickwork pattern to systematically remove weight. This will create more separation through the hair without obvious layering. Is used in a similar way to brick cutting to reduce weight internally. Again used on hair with more natural movement. The section of hair is twisted and the scissors are used to randomly cut into the surface. using these techniques is to minimize damage to the cuticle layer. The edging technique creates a frayed texture. A single blade is used with a razoring action, working with the direction of the cuticle. It can be used on the perimeter or internally to reduce weight and increase movement. Cutting creates a similar texture to edging, generally used internally on wet or dry hair to create foundation shapes or detail. The scissors work against the direction of the cuticle in a similar way to backcombing to create maximum texture to each individual strand. This will give more volume and versatility. This technique was used extensively in the Toni&guy Cuts with Perspective collection. Cutting with the razor creates a shattered internal texture. Classic sectioning patterns may be used, but the change of tool gives a much looser feeling. A controlled scooping action is used, which helps maintain a balanced shape. The razor can also be used to detail perimeter edges. Here, the tool is used on a shorter length to maximize texture.